News Radio 1000 KTOK. I'm Gwin Faulconer-Lippert. It's time for an update. Are you wondering how the saga of the Norman City Council voting about the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority resolution came out? Well, guess what? My two favorite people are here with me tonight. Randy Carter, you know him as the Director of Strategic Communications for the Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation. He also posts information on pikeoffota, and there is another Facebook page called No More Turnpikes. With him is Tassie Hirschfeld, who was the lead plaintiff in the open meeting lawsuit, which started the interference, if you will, the good interference. And she was able to, through her uncovering of records and things, actually show that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority has used willful deception in the planning of the 3 proposed turnpikes that do affect Cleveland County. She is an anthropologist and a researcher of public deception. They joined me this evening. I ought to have some soap opera music maybe. When last we were together, it was right before the Norman City Council was going to vote on the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority resolution. Randy, if you would you please recap what that resolution was and how did the vote go?
Well, the vote went very, very well. I'll get to that. The resolution was something that the OTA had proposed to the Norman City Council, and I believe probably even actually wrote it.
They did.
For the council, alleging or promoting cooperation between the Turnpike Authority and the city of Norman. Even though one of the opening sentences was the city of Norman does not want a turnpike, but however, we're going to do this and we're going to do that and blah, 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 blah. And the mayor had written a really odd preamble to it, quite frankly. Our group, Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation and pikeoffota, worked really, really hard to educate the city council members about all the reasons that they should not go into an agreement with the Turnpike Authority, and we cited all kinds of things that happened, especially with Oklahoma County, in dealing with the Turnpike Authority when they built the Kickapoo. Lots of broken promises and lots of unfinished business and
damage.
Damage to the county roads that is still, I believe, still unfinished, that the Turnpike Authority initially said they were going to pay for, and then basically reneged on it. But that was really some of the things we presented to the city council members. And then the vote, the resolution was then on the city council agenda. And I believe it was Matt Peacock, councilman. I can't remember. He was one ward councilman. Then he moved and got elected to another council seat. I don't remember the numbers of the ward that he represents, but he made a motion to reject the resolution as it was written. And then it went on, seemed like, for hours of public discussion. And actually, I think almost all of the speakers were against the resolution. And then when it came time to vote on this resolution, he made the motion to reject the resolution, which is kind of, anyway. So they all voted yes to reject it. So it was a unanimous vote, 8-0.
8-0.
8-0 to reject the resolution from the Turnpike Authority. So there it lay. And then as a result of that, a few days later, the Turnpike Authority came out and announced that they were no longer going to provide the access roads that they had proposed along the east-west connector, and they took out almost all of the on-off ramps, access points.
So let me ask a question. Wasn't it that they took off the ramps? But weren't the cities and the counties going to have to pay for those service roads themselves?
Well, the way I understand it is that the Turnpike Authority was going to build the roads, but then the city was then responsible for the maintenance and the traffic lights and preparing the roads to connect to those access roads and on-off ramps and all that business. we were able to compile a list of ungodly expenses that it was going to cost the city to maintain those. And luckily, the city rejected that. And now the Turnpike Authority was like, nah, we're going to take it all away because you won't work with us.
And it saved, what, 35 homes, didn't it?
I don't know the exact number. I don't think it's quite that high, but yes, it definitely saved homes. And we are incredibly thankful that is happening. I know that one of our group, their neighbor's home was saved, and the neighbor came over and was crying. And this is like a tough old cowboy neighbor. So, I mean, it's just really emotional kind of stuff. So we're all very happy that the city saw the light. We know there's so much evidence that the Turnpike Authority, even if they make an agreement with the city, they won't follow it, and there's no enforcement mechanism. So a hard no really does seem like the best option.
Let's go back to that, what you just said. No enforcement mechanism. So if they never go back to the Kickapoo and fix the drainage or whatever, it's just going to be like it is?
Well, we've seen historically that the Turnpike Authority has been cited for Department of Environmental Quality violations and over the years, and we have been able to find no data that shows that those were ever resolved. And normally the DEQ would fine a perpetrator for those violations, but we have been unable to find where the Turnpike Authority has fixed any of this stuff or paid any fines to mitigate it.
Yeah, my understanding, and I believe this was a conversation with Amy Serrato, because she asked the DEQ, and they said we don't have enforcement power against another state agency, so they can issue a citation, but they can't do anything else. And so the cities would be left with the option of taking ODA to court, but guess who has so much money to pay attorneys? So it's just a lose-lose for cities and towns.
Well, for people that haven't been following you so closely, it probably seemed like, oh my goodness, the Norman City Council voted against the Turnpike Authority. What they didn't realize until you had your press conference and all that is that you have all of this factual information. I mean, it's not like you're only speaking truth to power. And so the city council really listened, and that unanimous vote was delivered, saving the watershed of Lake Thunderbird.
Well, we hope, but I mean, my advice is always assume the worst, which means that the Turnpike Authority is either twisting arms or playing dirty or doing something underhanded to push forward these things that are terrible. So for now, we have a reprieve, but I wouldn't expect it to last.
Well, and that brings up another issue that I want to talk about. In the past, the Turnpike Authority has, through eminent domain, acquired all these parcels, and then later, what they haven't used, they've sold off. So what now, their footprint is going to be reduced, but they will still have excess properties. There's going to be a state question on the ballot in November. I believe it's state question. It's either 880 or 883. It'll be obvious because I believe there's only 2 state questions. But what it does, it was passed by Senate Joint Resolution and signed by the governor. It will allow a property owner or property owners, if 100% of the property owners decide that they vote yes and want to create, it's called an infrastructure tax district, then they can create this district and get the city council or the county, whatever the municipal entity is that's over that property, to vote yes on that. Then they will create this infrastructure tax district and sell bonds to then build the infrastructure. And then after the initial property owner sells those parcels to individuals, companies, if it's industrial, retail, or if it's homeowners, then a property tax will be added on to those specific properties to pay off those bonds over a 20 or 30 year period. To me, it's basically a hidden tax, a targeted hidden tax on people. And I suspect that that's probably been in the works for a while to get that out because of the opportunity for the city council to decline working with the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority.
That's so convoluted, isn't it?
Yeah, and in fact, I visited with the Senate author of that joint resolution, and I was like, well, who's going to be in favor? He said, oh, there'll be lots of money supporting this, and I can't imagine where that's coming from. But
but there's no, and it's going to be on this upcoming ballot
in November. Yes. Well, and Gwen, you know how state questions are. Most of us don't have a clue as to what they are until we get into the voting booth and we read them, and the way they're written, I think they're kind of it's almost like push polling. The way they're written, they write them so that you'll want to vote one way or the other on them.
True. That is true. So, an infrastructure tax district.
Mm-hmm.
So that it will benefit those people that have those parcels.
Well, and the interesting fact is that it's got to be 100% of the property owners. And the only time 100% of the property owners are likely to vote on that is when there's only one owner of that property who happens to be the developer.
Oh, wow. So what about the parcels that they've already secured that now will not be part of this? Or have they not bought the service?
I think they've only bought around Newcastle. But again, it's hard to know with them, because they sort of outsource this to right-of-way companies, and they, sometimes you don't know what's been bought and what hasn't.
Well, and they don't file deeds
right.
with the county like every other person, every other entity is supposed to do within a certain time period.
They don't have to file a deed?
Well, they do. They just don't have a timeline. So, in some cases, we've seen as long as a year go by. And that gives the person who bought it a tax-free year of property ownership because it's not on the tax rolls until the deed's filed.
Oh, my goodness. This just keeps getting better and better. Okay, I actually need to take a break, and I am talking with Randy Carter and Tassie Hirschfeld. They are with the Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation and are bringing us up to date on the No More Turnpike action, or Pike Off OTA, and they have made some strides successfully, but they're not fooled. And so we're going to talk with them more about what is next. Should there be 3 new turnpike projects in Cleveland County? We'll find out. News Radio 1000 KTOK. I'm Gwin Faulconer-Lippert, talking to Randy Carter, the Strategic Director for the Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation, and Tassie Hirschfeld, who is on the board of Pike Off and National Transport. You know what I'm saying. They join me this evening. You all have too many organizations.
Yes, we do. And you'd think we'd be organized, wouldn't you?
Well, you are very organized, and it is to your credit that you went to the powers that be, the city council, you presented them with the facts, and they agreed this is not a good thing for Norman. This is not a good thing for the citizens of Norman. And they said no after the Turnpike Authority was threatening to take away those exits. And they did. They've taken away the exits. I haven't heard anyone crying about that at all. And
not in Norman, for sure.
Not in Norman, that's for sure. But, Tassie, in the back of my mind, I remember you were doing research about the Norman Master Plan. And is that coming up for consideration again? Are they rewriting the future right now for the master plan?
They are. There's something called the AIM Norman Committee, and they are on kind of an accelerated timeline for a 2025 update of the city plan. I have mixed feelings about it. I feel like the committee is a little too heavily weighted and influenced by developers who want to build where it is not a good idea to build for environmental reasons. So I do have great faith in other members of the committee, so I'm hoping that it will be a good result. But one of the things that has been troubling to all of us, that when we see those planning maps, the the engineering firm that is doing them is an OTA contractor, and they keep drawing the turnpikes on them, and we keep saying, please take those off.
So he draws them on there even though you all have decided, or I guess, are the turnpikes still a go, just the exits aren't?
Well, depends on who you ask. I think the South Extension, the Bureau of Reclamation is a hard no on that route, so that should not be on there at all.
And that is the Lake Thunderbird watershed area. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that was the north-south.
Yeah, but the east-west connector affects the watershed as well. But
and that's Indian Hills Road, correct?
Yes.
East-west? Yes.
Basically.
And that's what they're starting on, and that's the one that they have so cruelly robbed us of access roads for. I'm sure you hear the sobbing and the rending of clothing all over the city of Norman. That
because
we would be deprived of
it's a rural area. Why would you want traffic in your area? I mean,
real estate developers were planning to put subdivisions there. That's all I can come up with as the explanation for that.
Yes.
Yeah, if the turnpike moves that far east towards Lake Thunderbird, then that's going to change the complexion of all that land, and it's going to make it a lot less rural, and it'll probably make it easier for the planning people and the city council to decide, oh, it's okay to go ahead and subdivide all this up and put in high density housing, which would have an extreme detrimental effect on the watershed, and also it would be hard on the infrastructure as well, and it would ruin our way of life out here, which this has been platted as rural. At this point, out in the area where the southern extension is proposed to go, by city ordinance, I suppose, or this plan, nobody can build a structure on less than 10 acres, and that is to be able to handle the water and sewage. We're all on wells out here, and everybody has their own septic tank, and that's to protect the watershed. You can imagine if a turnpike comes through, and of course, we know that a turnpike would never add any pollution to any area whatsoever.
Ask the Kickapoo farm people or country people.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the previous master plan, as you mentioned, was platted as rural. And I remember this years ago. They decided that East Norman should be beautiful and rural and natural and all of that.
Yes.
So it's only this commercial development. Can they not go further west? Is that the problem?
Yeah, there's floodplain west and more is north. And yeah, that this is, I mean, we have the misfortune or fortune of being on primo real estate within the city limits that developers would love to get their greedy hands on and dispossess the rightful owners so that they can build ticky-tacky houses that will ruin the water supply.
All right. I hate to do this to you, but I need to pause for an update from Fox News. I am talking to Tassie Hirschfeld and Randy Carter. They are on the board for the Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation. They're going to tell us more about their future plans because we know that, commercial people don't back down. And so what will we do? I also want to know, and I hope they're listening, I also want to know, what about the audit by the state auditor's office? What about the attorney general looking into all that? A lot of unanswered questions. I'm Gwin Faulconer-Lippert. You're listening to 1000 KTOK. News Radio 1000 KTOK. I'm Gwin Faulconer-Lippert, talking to the Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation. Pike off OTA, no more turnpikes. And they are joining me by phone. Tassie Hirschfeld is the anthropologist, researcher of public deception, and Randy Carter is the director for strategic communications. They joined me to give us an update on what is happening with the new turnpike projects. And so, Randy and Tassie, let me ask you this, and I don't mean this to sound mean. Do you find that you all have to be proactive or reactive?
Well, we're proactively reactive. How does that sound? Well, I mean, we can't. we were reactive when they announced the turnpike. We had nothing to do with it.
You didn't even know about it until you read it in the paper, right?
Exactly. I was blindsided by it. I was like, wait a minute, that's my house. Yeah. So obviously we've been reactive, but I think we've been proactive in the things that we've done to try to counteract the turnpike. Basically, I would love to have no turnpike whatsoever in Norman or Cleveland County, but realistically, we're fighting a tough battle against a Goliath, and we're the David. I mean, we've had a number of rocks that have hit some targets, but we haven't been able to put Goliath out of business.
Oh, that's a good analogy. You have had a lot of rocks, thanks to the brilliance of this all volunteer group that has really showed this government entity, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, if you will, that you aren't just average people that will take this line down. And, you know, Tassie, I last time when we were talking, you were talking about how even if they buy your property, if you wanted to fight it, how it ties up your money where you can't go get a new place to live even immediately.
Exactly. And not only that, but I mean, we've gone through and looked at the way they did the property acquisition for the Kickapoo, and they lowball the property owners because they know that you don't have a lot of choices. And so you're really losing out on every level. You're losing your home, and you're not really getting, in my opinion, a fair market value. And, you know, it's, and here's how, like, this is done via the normal appraisal process, which relies on comparable sales, but those comparable sales are not taken from an area with a highway coming in. So they're not really comparable. And so the valuation just gets all wonky, and they can force a sale, and people just feel intimidated, and they just take the lowball offer, and it's terrible.
Well, and what's interesting too, they use the term fair market value, which is what they say they offer, but fair market value is not the same as replacement cost. I don't think that I could replace my house and property for what the fair market value of it is.
Right.
And basically they're coming in and destroying my home is what they propose to do, and then leave me short to be able to create something comparable. It just, to me, it's just not fair.
Well, and the other thing is that you all have proven to the city council and others that these turnpikes are really not needed, and that our other turnpikes, what is it, only 3 of the 11 turnpikes even break even?
Well, and here's an interesting, thank you for bringing that up. This proposed east-west connector is already, based on our analysis, is going to operate in the red from the very beginning. It's not even going to cover its costs.
Right.
Explain the numbers a little bit better than that.
A real accountant, retired CPA, crunched these numbers, and it's horrific. The east-west connector will run a $3 billion deficit, and the Tri-City will run a $468 million deficit, and the South Extension, if built, will run a $1.4 billion deficit.
And that's based on the figures that they are creating, or their contractors are creating, to justify selling bonds.
Right. And so where is that missing money going to come from? Anybody who drives on the turnpike system. It's insane.
Well, and
toll increases is where it's going to come from.
Well,
the Turnpike Authority themselves said, when they were approached with this idea that they're going to be $3.7 billion for debt service over 30 years of the bond term, their spokesperson says, well, we don't rely on any single turnpike to pay for itself. So what does that mean? That means that everybody that's driving on the Turner Turnpike is going to be paying for this turnpike that's already not going to make enough money to pay for itself before it's even built. And then what are they going to do? They're going to have to raise tolls.
Exactly. And that doesn't even include operations and maintenance. That's just debt service.
So why do they think this is a good idea? I feel like a little 12-year-old kid raising my hands. Why is this good for me?
Well,
that's what we're asking as well.
I would hire a 12-year-old kid to run the Turnpike Authority any day of the week, because a 12-year-old kid will ask that question. That's the question that needs to be asked.
Crazy.
And it's just this giant money machine, land grabbing money machine that nobody seems to have any initiative or wherewithal to say this is not a good idea.
And they did years ago. They were in this same spot, and they said, the people of Norman or Cleveland County don't really want this. Let's don't do it. And they walked away.
They couldn't get the bonds because in that case, even like the bankers were like, this seems dodgy to us, and they have those standards.
So do you think they could sell the bonds now, though?
Well, it depends. And here's a problem that we really need the legislature to fix. As long as there are no limits on toll increases, bankers will loan them any amount of money. And if you put a limit on toll increases, bankers are like, oh, well, I guess we can't loan you $20 gazillion because you can't raise tolls that much. So until that gets fixed, then the debt bomb just keeps growing.
Well, and what's interesting about the fact that the Norman City Council rejected the resolution and that the Turnpike Authority is taking out these access roads and all these on-off ramps and access to the Turnpike, that will reduce the traffic on the Turnpike. And they use those traffic and revenue studies to justify the bonds. So now with reduced traffic and revenue, they're going to have to go back. In my opinion, they're going to have to go back and reassess what the bonds are going to be worth. And it's going to reduce the value of the bonds, but they're not going to reduce the value of the construction by.
Now, if anything, the construction costs will be even higher.
They will be higher, yes.
They are legally required to disclose what are called material events to their bond investors, but we don't see any evidence of them doing that, which is an SEC violation. So that's one of the things that we're trying to push out into the media of like, please ask them, when do you intend to disclose this to your investors?
And by SEC, we mean Security and Exchange Commission,
yeah.
Southeast Conference.
Well, it's the SEC that's driving the SEC, I'm afraid, in the case of Norman. But I need to take another break, but I really do want us to get back to what we think is happening with the audit of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority and what we think is happening with the Attorney General. And please, you all throw in anything that I might not even know to ask about. It is so convoluted. And if you don't believe me, ask the people that live in the neighborhood adjacent to the Gilcrease now Turnpike. That's a whole other bag. That's a whole other thing. So hold on, don't go away. I'm Gwin Faulconer-Lippert talking to Randy Carter and Tassie Hirschfeld. They're with the Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation. You're listening to 1000 KTOK. Pike off, OTA. News Radio 1000 KTOK. I'm Gwin Faulconer-Lippert talking to Tassie Hirschfeld and Randy Carter. They are on the board of the Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation. I have asked them to fill us in on the possible audit of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority by Cindy Bird, the state auditor and inspector, and also what's going on with the AG. So who would like to answer? Who would like to field this question?
First of all, it's not a possible audit. It is an actual audit, and it is in process. It's been going on since, I believe, November, almost a year now. Over a year now. Okay, Tassie knows more about this than I do, so take it away.
Well, I don't have a lot of details, and partly it's because of the professionalism of the people that work in the state auditor's office. We shouldn't have details. They need to do their work. They do their work best in quiet, and it's frustrating, and we're all impatient. But I think we just have to wait for them to complete their job. And I'm encouraged that it is taking this long because I want them to look at everything. Because if you're like me, nothing about OTA passes the smell test. And it really needs a good team of auditors in there sniffing around at every little document to see exactly what's wrong.
And what about the Attorney General, Gettner Drummond? Is he looking into the Turnpike Authority?
He sets the parameters for the state auditor's office, and I think they are probably in communication with him about their findings. That's just a guess. And beyond that, I really don't know.
Okay.
I think what my estimation of what will happen is the auditor will do her job and come up with conclusions or recommendations or whatever, and then that will be turned over to the Attorney General for him to, if necessary, take action on. that's basically what happened with Epic Charter Schools, I believe.
Yeah, I think Epic Charter Schools had criminal referrals to OSBI, but I don't know that anything like that's going on with the Turnpike Authority, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was.
Okay, so what else do you want to be sure and mention tonight in our monthly update?
Can I give everyone who drives a little heads up? I just got some open records emails.
Sure.
And according to this, OTA is planning a 15% system-wide toll increase coming up January 1st.
15%.
And that will help pay 15% to be followed by 6% every other year. And this is to pay for the turnpikes that no one wants or needs. So again, bad financial planning.
And oh my goodness, it's amazing how when you don't use the turnpikes, how much money you save.
I would encourage all of your listeners to experience that joy for themselves.
Well, I used to be a regular Zoomer on the Kilpatrick. And I have, ever since we started doing these interviews, I have now boycotted the Kilpatrick, unless it's an emergency, and then, I give in. But I have left 30 minutes earlier to get across traffic and all that. And I feel like a wealthy woman sometimes. Well, because that plate pay is no joke. It's one thing if you have a Pike pass, but plate pay is, I'll say, randomly double what a Pike pass is.
Yes, that is true.
And that's because, again, these open records, it looks like 50% of the plate pay revenue is lost because of technology failures. It doesn't work. People don't pay. So that's why it's going to keep going up and up and up.
So 50% of what they log in as revenues coming in, they're not unable to collect.
Exactly.
Oh, my. And I understand it's very convoluted when there is a mistake. If the
customer service is atrocious. If you look at online reviews, there are so many complaints, including people in California who just had the misfortune of driving through Oklahoma and getting a bill that they didn't deserve.
You mean the crossroads of America is not the big friendly on the turnpike? Is that what is happening?
Uh-huh.
Well, what other thoughts would you like to leave us with? Sometimes
I want to tell you about.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
If a fundraiser or whatever.
Going on.
Okay, good.
Something else that's going on too. You're talking about the audit. The Oklahoma, it's the Legislative Office of Financial Transparency. It's a separate entity from the auditor. They are also looking into the Turnpike Authority, investigating them on their financial aspects as well. So that's been ongoing, and they were projected to have a report by the end of the year. But then when this business with the state superintendent came up, I think it kind of bumped them off, delayed it a little bit further down the line. I really would have loved for it to have been available before the legislative session starts up, because, again, we're planning on promoting a number of bills to try to get the Turnpike Authority reined in on just a little bit if we can. And we've actually been quite effective with our legislative activities. If you remember, in a previous legislative session, we were able to get the legislature and override a governor's veto to change the way the Turnpike Authority is made up. Before this, the governor had all of the appointments to the Turnpike Authority. After the bill passed, I believe it was, I don't remember the number, sorry. After the bill passed and the governor's veto was overridden, then the governor maintained 2 appointments to the Turnpike Authority. The Speaker of the House got 2, and the President Pro Tem of the House got 2. So it kind of spread out the appointing mechanism for the Turnpike Authority, and we feel like that will be make the Turnpike Authority a little bit more responsible in dealing with what goes on over there.
Now, the state question that you mentioned earlier, do you all have any? Have you taken any side on it, or were you just mentioning it?
I was mentioning it. I personally am opposed to it. I think it's a hidden tax increase, and I think it's a bit of a convoluted way to put in infrastructure. Basically, these developers are wanting the taxpayers to pay for the infrastructure that they need to put in to develop an area. Normally, the developer pays for those expenses on the infrastructure, and then adds that onto the price of the property. I mean, that's included in their package, I would assume. Now they're going to sell that property to the eventual owner, and then plus there's going to be an additional tax on that property for 25 or 30 years, basically the life of the bond. And I wouldn't be surprised if those bonds were able to be renewed if they weren't getting paid off promptly. So I personally think it's a hidden tax increase on a selected group of people that will be unaware that it's going on. And to me, it sounds a little bit sneaky, quite frankly.
It does.
Like anything that convoluted is probably a bad idea.
If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. Well, I thank you both for your time on Sunday night. I look forward to hearing more from you, and anytime you know that I'm always interested. For people that would like to know more, they can always go to your website, and pikeoffota. You can go to the No More Turnpikes Facebook page, and you can also go to your YouTube channel, which has all of the, oh my goodness, great coverage of the meetings and everything. If you want to be well informed about this issue, because the turnpikes affect all of us, not just the people in Cleveland County. So
that is true.
Randy Carter, Tassie Hirschfeld, thank you so much for your time.